Hello and welcome to this week's Green Shoots, a history of Irish football with me, Caelan Kerwin. Coming up, we have another This Football Life interview as the great Gerry Armstrong, Northern Ireland legend, joins us on the podcast, where he'll be talking about the influence of Gaelic Games, being called up to Northern Ireland, and why you shouldn't have been around him if you had a glass jaw. Share the show on your own social media to let people know more about the history and heritage of Irish football on the island. Drop a comment for us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever it is that you listen to us. Now, Gerry Armstrong is a legend of Northern Ireland football, playing and scoring in some of their most iconic games of the 70s and 80s. In part one of our interview with Gerry, we talk about where his passion for football began, joining Spurs and getting his first caps for Northern Ireland. Gerry, you're very welcome to the podcast, and we'll start at the place that we often do. So take us back when you were growing up. Where did your love of football begin?
My mother was a Gallagher, and she had 7 brothers, and the 7 brothers all played Gaelic football and hurling. And I was brought up, and my grandfather was big into football. He was actually the groundsman for Casement Park, and so it was as a young boy. I remember him bringing me in a tractor up to Casement Park and spending hours kicking a ball around Casement Park. And I just grew up and was playing Gaelic football and never really played soccer. Maybe on the street I played a bit of soccer, but was always outside playing some sort of an activity, running about and keeping myself occupied. But it was always GAA, Gaelic football and hurling. And I was good at the Gaelic. I was very good at the Gaelic, and I was good at the hurling. I won an All-Ireland medal for Antrim Vocational Schools. We beat Tipperary in the All-Ireland final at Croke Park, and I was 16 then. It was a week before my 17th birthday. And then the following week I went back as captain of the Antrim Vocationals football team. And we played Mayo, and we got beat by a point in the final at Croke Park again. So that was my introduction. But at 16, 17, I was playing. Well, I played for St John's GAA club in Belfast. That was my grandfather was one of the founders there, and all my uncles played for them, the Gallaghers. So, and we were quite a successful club, So at 15, 16, 17, I'd won a lot of Antrim titles with St John's as a club team. But I never thought anything of playing like one match as a 16, 17-year-old for the minor team at 2:00, and then playing a senior match at 4:00 for the senior team, So it was activity all the time, and just a love of football and being competitive.
Yeah, so GA plays a really kind of heavy part in that. So where does the transition come then to play football, soccer then, if you want to put it that way?
That's the fun part, because I was playing a final for St John's. We were playing Corrigan, I think it was the team we were playing, and it was a minor final, and I was playing for Antrim senior football team then. As a 17-year-old, I was in the Antrim senior side, and the match was straight after the minor final, so I was playing the minor final first, and then I was going to play for Antrim seniors on the same pitch right afterwards. And I get sent off. There was a bit of we were a very good team, and the team we were playing were quite physical. And one of my friends got a broken ankle, and another one then got his arm broken. And I took it out on the 2 lads who were dishing out the stick, and I get sent off for breaking one of the guys' jaws, and I get suspended for 5 or 6 weeks from the Gaelic. So I wasn't playing anything. So that's when I started playing soccer. So I took up soccer, and I went and played for an amateur team one Saturday. And it was quite a good day for me. I scored a lot of goals, and a manager who was watching from Crummick Albion, he had seen me play and score goals, and he invited me to come and play for Crummick Albion the following week. And they were quite a good amateur team in Belfast at the time. Sammy Watson was his name, and Sammy said, "Big man, you're playing for me next week." So I played for Crummick Albion. I didn't play many games for them. I think 3 or 4 games I played for them. And then after one game, there was 2 men who were watching the game, and they come up to me and said, "Would you be interested in coming to train at Bangor Football Club?" And one was called Billy Neal, and the other one was called Bertie Neal. And Bertie Neal was the manager, and Billy was his coach, assistant. And I said, what do I have to do? And they said, turn up the back of the City Hall on Tuesday night and Thursday night, 6 o'clock. There'll be a minibus, pick you up and take everybody down to train and then take you back again. I said, right, no problem. So that's my introduction into Irish League football. But I hadn't really played much soccer, and my knowledge of the game and the skills and obviously offside and things like that were not great. And I'd never been coached at soccer before, so I went down and trained that Tuesday and Thursday, and then on the Saturday I was on the bench for the team in the semi-final of the Steel and Sons Cup. And basically I came on as a sub with 10 minutes to go when it was 1-1, and I made a goal and I scored a goal, but there was a very physical centre half who every time I got the ball and tried to go past him, he tried to take me out. And after it scored the second goal, the second goal that I was involved in was put Bangor 3-1 up in the reserves. It was Bangor reserves. I turned and hit him a right hook and got sent off. So I only made my debut for Bangor for about 6 minutes.
I'm noticing a pattern in your sporting career.
There was. Well,
broken jaws.
Yeah, Gaelic football was quite a physical sport then, and there was lots of fights in Gaelic football in those days. You know, I'm going back, this is 1972, 73. And, you know, you could actually punch somebody and you wouldn't get sent off. You know, if you punched somebody, that they would punch you back. And that was the sort of thing. And there was no problems afterwards. That was the game was over and that was it. But anyway, I got sent off. So the team obviously went to the final, but I couldn't play because I was suspended. But I gradually progressed through the ranks at Bangor Football Club, and then got into the first team, and I was there for 3 years. But a lot of clubs started taking interest in me, and so I was training 2 or 3 nights a week for soccer and 2 or 3 nights a week for Gaelic, and then on a Saturday I would play for Bangor Football Club, and then on a Sunday I would play for my club team St John's, or I'd play for Antrim.
So was it so? Just kind of connected to that, like, is it you weren't like necessarily an angry young man, you just didn't like people trying to throw their weight around at you, was it basically?
Well, the troubles were on in Belfast at the time, so like, I mean, you can imagine, I was still studying for my A-levels at St Thomas's School in Belfast, you know, and the area I went to, which was in Ballymurphy in White Rock Road, it was quite a hot spot in terms of trouble, you know, so the trouble was everywhere. You know, wherever you went, it was trouble, and you had to be able to look after yourself. You know, so it was one of those. It was standing up for myself, and I was like at 16, 17, I was probably 5'11", 6 foot then, and I was very strong and very quick. But the amount of training I was doing on a daily basis, you know, and playing on obviously a large Gaelic football pitch and being able to run and play as a midfield player from box to box, you know, that sort of was part of my development. And soccer was another side to it, which I really started to enjoy, because I did like soccer as a boy watching. I used to support Leeds United as a boy when I was 6 or 7, and watched all the stars playing for Leeds. So, you know, I had an interest in it, but my real talent was at Gaelic. You know, that's where I was very talented.
So is there a moment or a time where you because you're still pretty young, is there a moment or a time where you go, right, enough Gaelic games, you know, is there something on here for a career in football?
Well, I had to pack the hurling in, because we didn't have helmets then in those days, and I was playing not as much hurling as maybe Gaelic, but I was playing a lot of hurling. And when I won the All-Ireland, you know, for Antrim vocational schools, I had a lot of stitches in my head on a daily basis, because you were getting the hurl would come up the side of your hurl and catch you on the top of the head, and you'd get 2-3 stitches here and there, and you end up you were getting stitches very, but nobody had helmets then, and you just get on with it, you know, and you would get sticks broken across your leg, and you just get on with it. You'd limp for a couple of minutes and then you'd play on, and all of that was just part and parcel of it. But I packed in the hurling because I couldn't do all of it. I couldn't train for hurling, I couldn't train for Gaelic, and I couldn't train for soccer. So I stuck to the two ball sports with the Gaelic and the football, and that seemed a sensible thing to do at the time. So I stuck to that. But then as the club started getting more interested, and then I was playing for Bangor, and we're building quite a good team. And I remember we played Glentoran at the Oval in 1974-75, and it was the County Antrim Shield final. And Bangor wasn't a big club at the time in terms of winning trophies. So we went to Glentoran at the Oval and we beat them 2-1, and I scored the winning goal, a header, and that won it for us. So, winning the County Antrim Shield was the first sort of honours. And then as more and more clubs, and it was mostly Arsenal and Spurs and Liverpool and Coventry and Celtic and all different clubs who had been watching me over a period of time. And the troubles were not great in Belfast. So suddenly these clubs were looking to sign me. And Bangor were sort of saying, well, listen, this is an opportunity if you want to take a chance and go across. So I sort of half thought, I wouldn't mind trying to find out, could it be good enough? So that was in my head as well. And eventually the transfer went through to Tottenham Hotspur in 1975. And that's how I moved.
Were you aware at the time that there was a lot of interest in you? Did you know that there was people either coming to look at you or people were asking about you?
Yeah, I knew for probably 6 months. I mean, I remember we went away on tour one summer. We went to play Shrewsbury Town and some good amateur league sides over in England, in Lancaster. And I went on tour with Bangor Football Club. But it got me into trouble for Antrim because I was playing under 21, and we'd won the Ulster title. We beat Tyrone in the All-Ireland Ulster final, and that put me through to the semi-finals. And Antrim actually went to the final, but I wasn't picked because I didn't play in the semi-final. I was away playing for Bangor in England, so they left me out. And I think Antrim drew the first final and then got beaten in the second final. But then the following year, I was only like 18, 19, so I was still eligible. So the following year, we had another semi-final. And I think it was the August of 1975 when we'd won the Ulster title again, and we had to play Kerry in the semi-final at Tralee on the Sunday, right? And that was when I met my mate Paddy O'Shea and Pat Spallane and all those boys. They were all in that under-21 team.
Wow.
And it was crazy, but... I played for Bangor on the Saturday, of course. And straight after the match, I had a car at 5:30, picked me up at Bangor Football Club and took me down to Dublin, where I got something to eat, and then headed on partly down to Kerry and stayed overnight, and then got up the next day and did the last hour and a half to Kerry and got ready for the game. And that was my last Gaelic game for Antrim. It was the semi-final of the All-Ireland against Kerry and Tralee, and we got beat. But I gave Paddy a tough day. He said I was his hardest opponent, And I think Mick O'Dwyer had said to him, "You'll never catch Armstrong. He said he's going to be too quick for you." And Paddy never caught me that day. But it was a great game, and we got beaten. And we had a player sent off. It wasn't me, by the way.
That makes a change.
It was Brendan Tully, who, funny enough, Brendan Tully was another soccer player. He was a really good soccer player. So Brenton got sent off. So we were down to 14 men. And we got beaten in the final, our semi-final. And they went on to win the final and then win 5 or 6 All-Ireland senior titles in a row.
That's
that
right.
team,
Yeah.
that team was some team. It was a really good team. But it was a great experience. So I signed for, I played a week or so later. I remember playing for Bangor against Distillery, and they were a good team then. And I think we beat them something like 5-1. And I scored a lot of goals. I scored 3 or 4 goals in that game. And we were in the final of the City Cup, or the one of the cups in Northern Ireland. And I had to sign for Spurs because we played on a Saturday, and that I went home and nobody had said anything to me. And Arsenal seemed to be the club that were making the most progress. They were the ones who had come and spoke to me and made contact with me. But I got a phone call from a guy called Jimmy Apperson, who was our vice chairman at Bangor Football Club, on the Sunday morning. And I was to play at Casement Park on the Sunday. I'd played on the Saturday for Bangor, but on the Sunday was playing Casement Park. We were playing Cavan. And I got a phone call, and he said, "Look, Gerry, you're going to sign today." He says, "Meet me at the back of the City Hall. I'm going to take you up to do the signing." And that was Jimmy Apperson. And I met him And I thought I was going to be signing for Arsenal, to be honest. I thought they were the club that were making the most progress. But the talks was going on for several months behind my back. I didn't know. I let the two clubs get on with it. And when I went to the hotel in Temple Patrick, Terry Neal was there, who was the manager of Spurs. And he said, "You're signing for Spurs." He said, and that's when I had to do negotiations. And I hadn't a clue because I was I was working for the housing executive as a clerical officer. And I was on £23 a week. And they offered me £60 a week to sign for Spurs for 1 year. Jeez. With a 1 year option. And Bertie Neal negotiated on my behalf and got me more money, got me £65 a week, which I thought was a lot of money then, you know, and a signing on fee. And that's when I signed for. I had to phone Seamus O'Hare and tell Seamus, I'm not going to make the game today for Antrim at Casement Park, so I didn't get playing. And that's why the Kerry match was my last game for Antrim. So anyway, I signed for Spurs, and they let me sort a few things out for the next 4 or 5 weeks before I actually moved over to London and made the move. And then I went into digs in Edmonton, and I went into digs with Chris McGrath, who was in the first team at Tottenham at the time, and he was in digs, and started to meet all the players and started to find out what it was all about, become a professional footballer and train and work for full time on it. And it took me a few months to settle down, but once I settled down, I found my niche, and I got even fitter, which was, I didn't think I could get any fitter, but I got even fitter, and started to find out what my attributes were as a player that could get me into the first team.
Was there any sense of culture shock at all going from Northern Ireland into probably one of the biggest cities in Europe, with one of the biggest clubs, probably one of the biggest clubs in the world at the time, or certainly in terms of name and people knowing who Tottenham Hotspur were?
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, London was huge, but they put me in a hotel first, and I didn't like the hotel. Who was in the hotel? It was somebody else was in the hotel. Was it Alfie Conn? I think it was Alfie Conn. Alfie Conn was staying in the same hotel as me, which was in Finsbury Park, and it was a lovely hotel, but I just wasn't comfortable there. You know, and I just asked if I could move in the dig somewhere with like Chris McGrath, and you meet people. And I met Noel Brotherson, became a very big friend of mine. He was in the reserves and I was in the reserves. And then you meet all the other players, and we would train with the first team quite a lot, you know, and you'd meet the likes of Steve Perryman and of course Pat Jennings, and you know, all the stars who were playing for Tottenham. And
was it nice to have somebody like Pat around as well, because you know, I mean, that must have been for you, that must have been both fantastic to have a fellow countryman there, but also, you know, somebody who was an absolute star as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he was a legend at Tottenham. He was a legend for Northern Ireland as a goalkeeper, and we went on to be very good friends, Pat and I, and obviously became teammates and roommates. And yeah, for the next 10 years I played international football. I roomed with Pat, and we were very close friends and still are. Yeah. So it was a massive, you know, for having Pat used to give good advice. He was older than me, and he kept me right, and got me out of a lot of trouble a lot of times, because sometimes my fists were quicker than my brain.
I think we've established that by now. So what's Spurs like for you then? You're there for about 4 or 5 seasons. Was it tough to make it to first team football, or did you find yourself kind of gravitating towards there pretty early, or how did it go?
No, I was saying to you earlier, it was one of those where the first 2 months it was a real find yourself and find out what I was doing there, apart from just enjoying training every day. And you know, most of the first team players would train in the morning, but they wouldn't train in the afternoon. But I was in the gym in the afternoon training and working on my skills. It was something I needed to work on, because I'd only been playing soccer about 3 years, you know. And but that was a shock in one sense, because when I went down to the gym, there was a guy called Peter Shreves who went on to become Tottenham manager. But Peter was he was the youth development coach, and he would take the skills, and he was brilliant for skills and technique. Peter, he was very good, and he had us in this gymnasium, and it was concrete, and there was a goal at the left end and there was a goal at the right end. And but on the wall in front of you and behind you, there were circles, about 1 meter circles high up on the wall. And he said, I want you to do the skill. And he said, and he called this young lad over. He was 17 at the time, but he was tall and lean. And he said, I want you, Glenn, he says, I want you. And it was Glenn Hoddle, right? And Glenn hadn't broken into the first team yet.
Wow.
And he said, I want you to kick the ball into the circle. And he said, and then as it comes back off the wall, before it hits the ground, I want you to control it on your chest and then score into that goal on the left or that goal on the right. And he asked Peter Shreves, he said, Peter, which foot do you want me to use? He says, do you mind what foot, left or right? He says, it's up to you. And I went, is he taking the piss here? You know? So he kicked the ball with his right foot into the circle, and it was precision. Everything that Glenn did was precision, and it was like he looked like a ballerina when he was hitting the ball, and it hit the center of the wall and came back, and then he controlled it on his chest, and he made the control look class as well, because Glenn had that movement about him.
That's right.
And then he hit it with his left foot. So he hit it with his right foot into the circle, came back, he chest controlled it, and he hit it with his left foot into the top corner of the goal. And I went, oh my God. And he said, right, that's a skill, follow that. And I went, how do you follow that? You can't follow that. So I was really
I've only been kicking the ball on the ground for 3 years.
I know. So it's like, I thought there's no way I'll ever be able to do this. And Glenn made it look so easy. So that was quite daunting. As a 17, he was 17 and I was 20, 21, you know. And I was thinking, how am I going to do that? But then over a period of time, I started finding out that one, I was quicker and stronger than everybody else. I had a great attitude. I loved training. I couldn't get enough training. And I was very competitive. And suddenly you start to find what your attributes are. And playing with Glenn could put a ball on the sixpence. When he got the ball, he could stick it over the top of the defence and I'd be on it in a flash, you know. So you started to find out your attributes. And then I remember I'd been there about 4 or 5 months when Spurs were playing Everton away. Terry Neal was the manager. Keith Birkinshaw was his coach. And we went to play Everton, and I was the 12th man. I was the sub, and there was only one sub then. And I was in the first team, and John Duncan, I think, scored both goals that night. We beat Everton 2-0 at Goodison Park. And I was on the bench, and, you know, I didn't play, but because I was in the first team, I got the win bonus. And the win bonus was £200. And I was only on £65 a week. And I couldn't believe that they're paying me £200 for to win a match when I was sitting on the bench and didn't even kick a ball. You know, it was crazy. So you start learning all these things. And, you know, it was a real experience. You know, the first year was a real experience. But I established myself. And then I went on a world tour with Tottenham. At the end of that season, we went to Toronto to play the Toronto Metros, and Eusebio was playing for Toronto Metros in those days. And then we travelled down after the match. We beat them 1-0 and travelled down to Los Angeles and spent a couple of days in Los Angeles en route to Hawaii, and then Hawaii into Fiji. And then we played a game in Fiji and we won comfortably there. I think they were more a rugby team than a football team.
They would be out there, yeah.
And we actually went from Fiji then to New Zealand and played in Wellington and Auckland, and we won both those games. Then we went to Australia and we played in Newcastle and we played in Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney, Perth, and then went home via India. It was some trip. It was like 5 or 6 weeks away, and we won all our games. But I roomed with Glenn Hoddle at the start of the trip, and then I was end up rooming with Steve Perryman by the end of the trip, you know. So it was all a learning curve for me, and I started to find myself.
Did you play with them? Because I know Tony Galvin was there around about the same time as
Tony came after me. Yeah, Tony came around 77. Around 77. Tony came, and Tony was great because he was from Yorkshire, and you know, it was great because Chris Hughton was there as well. I roomed with Chris for quite a few games. Chris was a great lad. And I remember when Chris and I were roommates and we were playing at Tottenham. And it was still, football was just, it was different then, but it was actually a lot more honest. Football was more honest then. Nobody dived. Nobody knew how to dive. There was no diving, which I still have a pet hate about. I see players football, I go, are you having a laugh? I can't believe people are still getting away with it. But they're so good in Italy and Spain and South America. They're so good at it. But now it's crept into the English game. Some of the English players are really clever at it as well. So it's become part and parcel and accepted by the game, but it'll never be accepted by me. I think it's cheating. It's still cheating in my opinion.
I remember all those years listening to you when you were commentating on Spanish football as well, and you would lose the plot when you'd see players completely untouched hitting the ground.
Yeah, I hate it. I still see today, like I'm watching games like every day. I'm watching a couple of games a day. And I like keeping my knowledge up as well, for I'm still doing my commentary work. But, I see a player going down and it's like, the player falls and he's rolling over 2 or 3 times and they go away and then they come back and he's got his hands over his face. And I think, oh, well, I'll see if there's any blood in a minute. And then he gets up and you see there's no blood. And I thought, well, he wasn't obviously elbowed in the face. And then you see it goes back again to the replay. And this is the difference. Like the replays now with the VAR, they're very concentrated. You can get right to the point. And you see him coming up. And the 2 players are jumping for a ball. And you can't jump without using your arms for leverage. So the hands go up and it's the fingertips touches them on the cheek. And they go down holding their face. And I go, oh, come on. Are you kidding me here? And I can't still accept it. It's just not part of my DNA. I just can't accept it. But anyway, Keelan, that's the way.
So you're at your time at Spurs then, and then during your time at Spurs, you're called up for Northern Ireland as well. Were you? It's interesting because are you in a bit of a? I know you're a professional footballer and you get into it and stuff like that, but do you take the time to kind of realize where you've come in a very short space of time? You're playing with one of the biggest clubs, in the world at the time, or certainly the biggest names in English football anyway. And then all of a sudden you're asked to come play for your country then as well. So for a person who was probably particularly not interested in football, you went a long way in a very short space of time with that.
Yeah, well, see, I was older. I mean, I didn't realize. I thought, most of these players came and started playing football when they were kids, and then they became apprentices at 14, 15. So that's the way it was then, and now it's sometimes even younger if they're associated. Like you find out, about Harry Kane, and he was at Arsenal, and he left Arsenal as a 10, 11-year-old to go to Tottenham, and so they're getting coached from no age. So I thought I was playing catch up, but I took a lot of it in my stride. I never really thought too much about it. But it was exciting. I mean, I remember I played for the reserves one day, and then I got a phone call from Terry Neal on the Saturday. And Terry said to me, Gerry, and he was very straight to the point, Terry Neal, he went, right, have you got your football boots? Get your boots. And I said, what do you mean? It's like Saturday night at sort of 6 o'clock, 6:30. And he said, no, he said, you're going tomorrow morning, meet the international team at Heathrow Airport, terminal, whatever it was. And I says, right. And he went, you've been called up for the Northern Ireland squad. He said, they have a friendly match against Israel in Tel Aviv. And he said, they've had players pulled out. And Dave Clements is the manager, and he's just contacted me and they looking players. And I've told him, take Gerry. He's going to be a future star. He said, take Gerry. And I thought, that was good, like a Terry to recommend me. So anyway, I goes, and Chris McGrath, who was my roommate in Digsworth, he was already selected and he was going, and Chris drove. And he said, I'll drive. He said, sure, get your gear. So I had to go and get my boots and everything I needed, with shin pads. And I packed my bag. And the next morning we got up early and we headed to Heathrow. And I turned up, and that's when I met Alan Hunter and Pat was there, Pat Jennings. And you've got Sammy Nelson and Pat Rice, and from Arsenal. And you've got all the different players from Manchester United. Jimmy Nicholl, I think he made his debut that day when we played in Tel Aviv in the friendly match, Jimmy Nicholl. And Derek Spence was our centre forward. And we had loads of all these players coming in, Brian Hamilton, and they were all established players in their own right. So it was another step and forward. And I was looking forward to it. And I remember we played Israel and we drew 1-1. And Warren Feeney, who was an Irish League player, played on the left wing, and he played one match international football for Northern Ireland, and he scored. He scored in the 1-1 draw. And afterwards we went out, and Pat had came in late. He didn't come in with the team from Heathrow. He came a day afterwards because he was up for an award with the PFA on the Sunday, and he stayed on the Sunday night to get his award. He got the PFA Player of the Year award.
Wow, yeah.
You know, I think he was the first goalkeeper actually to get it. So Pat had done that, and he won the sports writers, and then he won the players. So he's won both, which is an incredible,
for a goalkeeper to win that is incredible.
Yeah. So Pat turned up on the Monday, and he was my roommate. I was in with him. Anyway, there was a guy who was picking him up, and Dave Clements was great. He was the manager. I think Dave was maybe in America as a player, and he was managing Northern Ireland as well. So he had me in the squad, and we trained on the Monday morning. And then afterwards, he said to me, "Oh, Pat's getting picked up. This guy's picking Pat up." And he was quite a high-ranking Israeli guy, and he was a small guy, little Jewish guy, and his name was Rafi. And he introduced himself to me, and he said, "I'm going to pick Pat up. You're his roommate." And I went, "Well, yes." And he said, "Do you want to come with me? We'll go and pick him up from the airport." And I said, "Yeah." So I went with him, and we picked Pat up and came back. And then he took us all through all the Holy Land, and took us to Bethlehem and all that. We did the whole, the biblical tour. It was great. And I thought, this is brilliant, So anyway, we go back to the room, and we played the match on the Wednesday night. And afterwards, I remember my shirt and tie and everything on. And we went out, and Pat had said, "Right, well, after the match," and it was a friendly game, he said, "We're going to go to this place." Rafi had recommended it, and it's Mandy Rice Davidson's nightclub. And I went, "Right, okay." I hadn't a clue who Mandy Rice Davidson was. I had no idea. So we turned up at Mandy Rice Davidson. I was with Pat Rice and Sammy Nelson and Pat Jennings, myself, and a lot of players, Jimmy Nicholl, Derek Spence. And I was standing watching them. Derek was up dancing with this girl, and I didn't realise that the girl had a boyfriend. I don't know if Derek knew that as well, but anyway, there was a confrontation, and an incident started. And this guy, he picked up a stool and went to hit Derek with a stool. my instincts kicked in straight away, and I hit him right hook, and he went down, and it kicked off. The fight kicked off, and suddenly there was 4 or 5 of them coming in, and I thought, well, the players are all here; they'll all back me up, like they did in Gaelic. No. Right,
you're on your own.
Man, go on, son. You're on your own. So the police came in, and they were arresting everybody, and I remember Pat was laughing. He was crying, laughing. He couldn't believe it. And he walked away, and he came back with Rafi. And Rafi, I didn't know he was that high ranking, but he was high in the Israeli government. And he started shouting at these guys in Hebrew. And they were all going, "Yes, sir, yes, sir." And they all knew who he was. I didn't know. So anyway, they took the handcuffs off me and released me and Jimmy Nicholl and Derek Spence. And Pat said, "Remember, Gerry," he said, "it's not what you know, son, it's who you know." And I went, "Okay, Pat, thank you." So that was a learning curve as well. And it was my first call up for Northern Ireland, but I didn't actually play. But then another few months later, Danny Blanchflower took over as manager. He brought me into the squad. And then he gave me my debut against West Germany in Cologne when we played West Germany. And I played up front with George Best. That was my first game with George. Which was really exciting.
Is it? What's that like? Because you're growing up and you're weaned on the stories of somebody like George Best and Pat Jennings and the likes as well. So when something like that happens and you have to go and you're playing with them, maybe on the same pitch or even in the squad with them, etc. Do you just kind of go, okay, this is the way it is, or do you have time to reflect on that, or do you just I got to go and do what I do?
It was a roller coaster ride, and I just got on it, and I just participated, and I made mistakes as I went along, but it was fun, it was exciting, and I was just enjoying it. Somebody was paying me money to play the sport I loved, so I just enjoyed it, and I started getting good at what I was good doing. I started to learn, and I did. I embraced it quite well. And Keith Birkinshaw took over very shortly after that because Keith had to take over from Terry Neal. Terry Neal was offered the Arsenal job, which was his first club, and he went back to Arsenal as manager. And Keith Birkinshaw took over as coach at Tottenham. And Keith had been big in helping me in my development when I was in the reserves and when I was in the first team. And he was a good coach. Keith was a very good coach, and he had helped me. So that was all part and parcel of it. So you just keep learning and keep making progress.
So what happens then that you end up going to Watford then? Was that, did the club wanted to sell you or what?
Well, I mean, after a couple of years, I started to establish myself in the first team, but I was playing as a centre forward. But then when Tottenham got relegated in 76, 77, we had to bounce back again in 77, 78. And Keith was the man given that task. And we had to play some tough games in the championship then, or the Division 2 as it was called. You know, and you were playing a lot of tough games against the likes of Bolton Wanderers. Southampton were down there at the time. And there was your teams, like Mansfield Town was a tough game, you know, having to go and play there in really bad conditions. So Tottenham had to fight really hard to come straight back up again. And I was then deemed a utility player because Keith had played me at centre half when we had an injury crisis. And I ended up playing centre half in Sweden on tour. And I had a 6'5" guy who was like built like a brick shit house, and he was big and strong, but I didn't care. I just kicked lumps out of him and won everything, and was too quick for him, too strong for him. So, you know, Keith decided that I was a centre half, so he started playing me at centre half. So it gave me more opportunities to play in the team. So I started playing quite a few games as a centre half for Spurs in the first team. And then we played Millwall, and he played me at right back because there was a boy there who was tall and strong, and he was very good in the air. And I ended up playing right back against Millwall. And then suddenly I become a utility player. And when you only have one sub, having somebody who can play in about 6 positions. I think in Norway actually played me in goal in one of the games. We had an injury. I ended up playing in goal. And, you know, because of my Gaelic and my skills and what have you.
Yeah, true,
so
yeah.
You get thrown in everywhere. And anyway, I was a utility player. And it was fun at the start, but when you're playing international football for Northern Ireland and you're a centre forward, recognised centre forward, scoring goals for the team, I remember one game, this was the final straw. I was playing in the first team, Stoke. We were playing Stoke away, and John Duncan was injured, and I was thrown in up front as the main striker with Ian Moores. And I played against Dennis Smith. Dennis Smith was a really tough cookie in those days. And him and I, we were similar in the sense that we wouldn't give up and we wouldn't give in, and we kicked lumps out of each other. But we beat them 3-1, and I scored 2 goals that day. And the second goal was a really good goal, and I gave Dennis a bad time. And afterwards, I remember coming away, and Keith was really chuffed to bits that we'd won. It was a big game to win, and it kept us in the top 3, and the top 3 went up. But I had to leave the next day to join the international team. We were playing in the World Cup qualifier against Belgium at Windsor Park. And I remember going to Windsor Park and playing on the Wednesday, and I scored twice against Belgium. We beat them 3-0, and I scored twice in that match. And come back on the Thursday and went into train on the Friday morning. I trained, and John Duncan was fit, and I thought, right, he's going to have to make a decision here, you know, if he plays me or not. But it would be easy for him just to stick me on the bench. So I thought he's going to put me on the bench, right? So anyway, he didn't put me on the bench, and he didn't pick me. And I was in the reserves playing centre half at Bristol City. And that was when I thought, no, I'm going to have to change this. So I went in and seen Keith and told him I wanted a transfer. And I said, I can't keep doing this, you know. And he said, right, understand. But he wouldn't sell me because it was too good an asset to have. He kept me on tenterhooks for about 7 or 8 months. And then Watford, Graham Taylor came in and he told me he'd been trying to sign me for a year and had made several offers, but Spurs never told me, you know, and Keith was trying to keep me as part of the squad, you know, and he was building a good team. He had Tony Galvin was in the team and all, you know, through, and it was a good wee club. And he had signed Ozzy Ardiles in 78, Ozzy and Ricky signed in 78. So the team was really evolving. And I had some fantastic days, you know, with Spurs right up to 1980, and that's when I signed for Watford. But I took a step backwards, but it was actually, in the long run, it was a step forwards because Graham Taylor taught me everything, you know. about being a centre forward, and his coaching and his mentor. He was a mentor and mentorship. He really coached me on how to be a team player and how they worked. And he played a system at those days where he didn't let the goalkeeper throw the ball out to the fullbacks, which we did at Tottenham and I did for Northern Ireland. He made the goalkeeper kick the ball long. And he said, you bypass all the midfield. He said, it's going to be up to you to challenge for the ball and win it. And then he had John Barnes and Luther Blissett gambling and looking for flick-ons. But we were a very attacking side, and it suited me, and the direct style suited me. And we worked on set plays, and we worked on free kicks and corner kicks and throw-ins and everything, and scored goals from them. So that next 3 years was great. So as we were getting promotion in 1981-82, Northern Ireland, we were qualifying for the World Cup in 1982. And I was heavily involved with Northern Ireland in that, scoring goals, against Portugal, that was a big game, massive game.
Am I right in saying you beat Israel at Windsor Park to qualify for 82? Is that right? Yeah.
That was the final game. We had to beat Israel, and we beat them 1-0. I scored the winning goal there. But the game before was an even bigger game. Well, we were playing Scotland were top of our group. They were a really good side, and we drew 1-1 with them at Hampden.
That's right.
And we should have beat them at Belfast, but we beat Sweden 3-0 in the first game. And I was heavily involved in that as well. And my time at Watford was really productive. He got me even fitter than I thought I could get. I didn't think he'd get any fitter, but he got me fitter. And I was quicker and stronger, and I was more positive and learned a lot more about anticipation and stuff, So my instincts were getting better, and I learned good things at Watford. So I went backwards to go forwards. And Graham was part and parcel, like Graham Taylor. And, we qualified by beating Israel the last game, and I scored the winning goal there. And we were in against Spain, Yugoslavia, and Honduras in the World Cup. And every player dreams of playing in a World Cup. So this was our opportunity. And I was training. We used to train twice a day at Watford, but I'd go home and have my tea, and then I'd go out running at 7 o'clock at night. I'd had a run. I'd go for a run through the forest, a 4 or 5 mile run, and I would time myself. And I set myself targets and that was like 4 or 5 months before the World Cup started. So I was way ahead of everybody. I was getting really fit and strong, and it paid off.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about Billy as well, Billy Bingham as well, because so I suppose for me growing up, I only really knew Billy from that kind of infamous night in November in 1993. So I think my kind of view of Billy was quite skewed in a different direction. But the more I've learned about him and the more that I've read about him, he's quite the opposite of what I suppose the image of growing up with him was, that he was quite an incredible manager who wanted just everybody to come in and play football and be part of something.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's the greatest manager Northern Ireland's ever had, and we won the British Championships in 1980.
That's right, yeah.
And then we won it again in 1984, and we actually hold the trophy because that was the last year, and whoever won it that year kept the trophy. So 80 and 84, and that's the first times we've ever won it outright. It's crazy, and that was the team that I was playing in the World Cups in 82. And then in 84, we beat Germany home and away. And I remember we beat them 1-0 in Belfast, but after the World Cup, I jumped for a ball and landed awkwardly and broke my ankle and my leg. And I was out for about 3 months from playing. And I had to go back and get fit again and start all over again. But coming back in, it was great coming back in. And we played Germany in the Euro Championships in Hamburg, and we beat them 1-0. And, no team has ever beaten Germany home and away in any World Cup or European qualifying competition ever. So Northern Ireland's the only team to ever do it. But we had their number. I'm not being funny. When we played, teams hated playing against us because we were very uncompromising. We had players who could look after themselves. I think one of the game that stood out for me in the Hamburg was Gerry McElhinney made his debut for Northern Ireland, and Gerry and I played Gaelic. He played for Derry, and he played under 21. And I remember me and Gerry playing against each other under 21. And I remember him punching me and me punching him for most of the game. I mean, we're talking probably right hooks and left hooks, and it was one of those. And but Gerry was actually at one stage he was light heavyweight boxing champion of Northern Ireland. He was 6'3", and he was so untrue. And he was marking Karl-Heinz Rummenigge that day. And I said, "This guy's too quick for you, Gerry." I said, "I'm telling you now, you need to get him sorted early on." I said, "Nail him early on." Wow, he nailed him in about 20 seconds. Big size 12 boot up the side of his face, caught him. When he was controlling the ball on his chest, Gerry put his boot up and caught him with the studs right down the side of the face. Rummenigge went out and played on the wing for the rest of the match. He wouldn't come near him. But we beat them. Norman Whiteside scored the winning goal that day, and we beat them 1-0. What a night. What a great. It was my 50th cap, actually, for Northern Ireland. And I remember going back to the hotel, and the thing that stood out was Billy Bingham bought everybody a drink. Never happened before, ever. Pat Jennings is still in shock. He's still in shock that Billy bought a drink, and it was great times with the team as we were developing and growing. And then we went in straight. We should have qualified for the Euros, but Germany and us finished on the same points. But believe it or not, because Germany had scored 2 goals more than us, they went through. We had beaten them on the head-to-head. That rule would come in first, the head-to-head against each other. We beat them home and away, and that didn't count, unfortunately, then. So we didn't make the 84. We should have qualified, but we qualified for 86 for Mexico, but the team was aging, and that was Pat's last game for Northern Ireland against Brazil in Mexico in 86 in Guadalajara, and that was his 119th cap, which was an incredible record for Pat over 20-odd years as an international footballer.
Well, that's it for this week's episode. On next week's podcast, it's part 2 of Gerry's interview, where we look at Northern Ireland at the 1982 World Cup and that goal from Gerry on a hot, humid night in Valencia, plus playing under Graham Taylor at Watford and making the move to Spanish football. That and much more with Gerry on next week's Green Shoots podcast. And remember to support your local League of Ireland and Northern Ireland Football League teams. It's our heritage, it's our game. Bye for now.